The unstoppable deadlier second global COVID wave is here now. Even some virologists and physicians etc. are unteachable, trivialize, fail to grasp the facts, or are followers of conspiracy theories. The second wave of the corona pandemic is becoming a global wildfire, and about the suitability of various masks. Extract from the 754th Contact Report of September 23, 2020. This is an unofficial, unauthorized translation and may contain errors.
Well, the telephone calls I've been talking to you about, they always refer to the corona disease, and there are always questions coming up, which I can only answer according to your explanations. For example, if you are also engaged in research for an antidote to possibly, well, you know.
No, we are not engaged in such research, because we do not need such medical means, because we are not exposed to any danger whatsoever with regard to this epidemic in order to come into contact with it. We are also not allowed to pass on such knowledge according to our directives or even mention it if you want to address with your question that you might have been asked about it.
Yes, that's what I meant, but effectively no one has ever asked me about it, which might be, but then I could only give the answer I've always had to give since Svath told me that you have to comply with the directives and you are not allowed to interfere in any way.
Which corresponds to far-reaching and necessary safety precautions, because only in this way can manifold infectious mischief be avoided.
I am well aware of this, but while we are on the subject, I would like to talk about the pandemic again, although we didn't really want to talk about this epidemic anymore, although we have not stopped talking about it 2 or 3 times already. Because there are always new inquiries from all over the world. People are afraid, they worry and they have problems because those in power are too stupid to take the right action and think up, implement and enforce the right measures. This, while about 15% of the population are stupid, because they are not capable of logical thinking due to their lack of intelligence. So they do not follow the necessary security measures. If stupidity rules, because cognitive ability is missing and therefore understanding and reason cannot be used, because of stupidity, which is caused by an inability to think, then there cannot be any cognition. But this lack of intellectual strength and lack of intellect, I must say pathological pathological deficiency, leads to the fact that the entire ratio is switched off and not recognized, which is effectively a fact. In addition, these people, these stupid earthlings, are still clinging to the brain-amputated conspiracy theorists like bait on a hook, who, with their conspiracy bollocks, are rocking the stupid earthlings in their non-thinking and irresponsible actions and behavior. The intellect of the weak, the conspiracy theorists and their followers, is almost at a state of sub-zero because they are so handicapped and limited in their ability to think because of their inability to use their consciousness that they are not able to have any cognitive faculty with regard to effective reality.
You never cease to amaze me, what apartment phrases you manage to make clear any facts without unnecessary objections, Billy, if you think so. But somehow, if something is to be explained, you have to make the whole thing sensible. But something else, you recently said that at the end of this month and the beginning of October the second wave of the corona epidemic will break out, which you should explain a little more about, I think. Yes, because it will probably be important to explain some more important things about it, even if we didn't want to talk about it anymore. However, the second corona wave that is now already looming requires that some more is said about it, and that is, after a thorough examination of our directives, we have received permission, as I already explained to you on January 2nd, to test all the various products of all the respirators you have procured for us through lengthy tests and investigations, which have resulted in very remarkable expert opinions and sometimes astonishing results. the essence of which I will mention later. But first I have some other things to explain, starting with this.
1. The great unreasonableness and inability of the state leaders with regard to the necessary measures to combat the corona epidemic will continue to be ill-considered and inappropriate, as we have already fathomed, on the one hand, and consequently also with regard to the adoption and implementation of protective, preventive and containment measures against the further spread of the corona epidemic, on the other hand. A failure and thus a failure to develop all the necessary protective, safety and precautionary measures, and the spread of the disease will now spread worldwide.
2. The failure of the state leaders has the unstoppable consequence, as I already explained earlier, that now the second wave of the epidemic begins and spreads in a catastrophic way over the whole earth in such a way that many victims are demanded, against which nothing more effectively can be done for the time being. In total, all those leaders will fail who are in the front line and should be responsible for the creation, decree and implementation of the necessary measures. Measures that would be absolutely necessary for the protection and health of the people, but which the state leaders are not capable of and are not fully responsible for due to their inability to govern. Therefore, there will not be a country on earth that will not suffer from the corona pandemic and will not have many infected and dead people to mourn as a result of the inability of the state leaders and the state health officials, all those responsible for this. Those leaders who are incapable of their offices and who make themselves important but profoundly ridiculous through loudness, are not able to devise necessary measures or educate their people against the corona epidemic because of their inability to lead, nor are they in any way able to assess, devise or implement the necessary and correct measures in the current situation of a pandemic which is degenerating into a conflagration and is beginning to spread worldwide, by not recognizing the danger of the pandemic in its entirety. They are only doing the wrong thing, which is why they were unable to prevent or even mitigate the second wave of the global conflagration. And before you ask what will happen and what will continue to happen in relation to your home country, I cannot predict anything better, because the responsible leaders of Switzerland, who are dealing with the corona epidemic, are not to be judged differently with regard to their ridiculousness and their importance imagination, than all the others of the worldwide rulers. And this concerns mainly the special leaders at the highest level, who unfortunately have to be judged in the same way as all other leaders of all countries in the same positions.
3. The incapacity of the political parties at the top of the state leadership and the political parties that are equally responsible for the same tasks will fail, as well as the highest incapable state leaders who, through the parties in their irrational and unreasonable actions and behavior that promote the corona epidemic, are now letting the corona pandemic, which is in its second wave, degenerate into a great disaster.
4. Various jurisdictions and authorities are also being led into dangerous and corona plague-promoting environments by irresponsible and mindless officials and judges who, once issued by the state or local authorities, pass halfway or good ordinances on safety precautions created to prevent the disease by irrational authorizations and court decisions. This is done by irresponsibly nullifying and repealing bans and regulations, such as those concerning the closure of restaurants, bars, hotels and fitness facilities, restrictions on training operations of all kinds, the operation of public transport, as well as all public sports and entertainment events.
5. Also the irresponsibility regarding the operation and use of irresponsible workplaces contributes to the spread of the corona disease. Therefore such workplaces should be prohibited if too many people have to carry out work activities in one place too close to each other and without respirators, such as butcheries, offices, training rooms, offices rooms, official offices, as well as business rooms, offices and secretariats, etc. Such places of work should be furnished and appropriate behavior should be followed, such as
1. Breathing masks should be worn.
2. From workplace to workplace or from person to person, an intermediate distance of at least 2 meters should exist.
3.
Sufficient window ventilation, possibly door ventilation, is necessary.
4.
An air cleaning device that sucks and filters the air would be necessary.
5.
Separating desks between workstations are indispensable.
6. Changes of the working area necessary adjustments. Change of working area are necessary if necessary precautions cannot be guaranteed. 7.
Homework should be considered if possible. If important points cannot be guaranteed, can be made.
6. In further consequence, with regard to nonsensical views, opinions and behaviors, those who are addicted to stupidity and unreasonableness must also be mentioned, who suffer from a pathological lack of intelligence, and reveal this state as a weakness of consciousness of those parts of the population by not adhering to necessary safety rules. This is because they have, as a result of their personal stupidity, fallen into a profound lack of intelligence or a total lack of intelligence, which causes them to lack any cognitive ability. Consequently, they cannot perceive, grasp or understand the transformation of information carried out by their behavior control system, let alone implement it reasonably. Their lack of understanding and reason does not allow them to grasp the effective reality and truth of the corona plague, nor are they able to realize the pathological delusion of the conspiracists they join and advocate their nonsense. 7.
As I have explained several times since last February, even the wearing of simple FFP1 respirators does not provide any protection against pathogens of any kind. Respiratory protection masks of the quality FFP2 and FFP3, on the other hand, can prevent an infection by fungal spores, microorganisms, bacteria and parasites, but even these are not suitable against viruses. Against these, special safety suits or closed protective suit systems with corresponding masks and breathing apparatus are required, which are hermetically sealed from the outside in the best possible way. Such protective suits can be reused several times, but must be disinfected after each use by chemical cleaning showers before taking them off. Even the best breathing masks do not offer complete protection against virus infection, so even such masks cannot guarantee against viruses. In the best case, wearing the best protective masks always leaves a residual risk of 4–6%. Effective protective masks, which offer protection against infection to a large extent, but never 100%, are masks of the quality FFP2 and FFP3 according to the terrestrial standard, although these must be products that have been tested for their suitability by specialist institutes etc. Unfortunately, it is a fact that a lot of so-called respirator masks are on the open market, which are neither tested nor of any value, because these worthless and extremely unsuitable products are only for profit, but in no way for health safety. It must be explained that even the best commercially available FFP2 and FFP3 respiratory masks do not offer any protection against viruses of any kind, because this is only possible with completely hermetically sealed whole-body protection systems, which are also equipped with their own breathing air supply. In general, such systems must be cleaned after each use with strong chemical acids etc. FFP2 and FFP3 quality protective masks for sale to the general public, which are tested by specialist agencies, comply with certain standards, are marked with a quality seal and are therefore also traded at a correspondingly high price, which, however, usually also corresponds to the value of the product and the reliability of the product. With your help we have examined, tested and evaluated some of the 4 types of respirator masks that you have handed over to us and found the following types acceptable, if they are professionally tested protective masks, which are also marked as such and can be evaluated as good. However, caution is required, because this marking does not have to be a guarantee of quality, because there is a lot of fraud in this area. Exact clarification and investigation is therefore necessary when buying protective masks. Purely self-made fabric masks of all kinds are equally unworthy, just as fabric masks are absolutely useless in the trade and products of irresponsible profiteers. Consequently, only purchasable respiratory protection masks should be used for the intended purpose, whose origin and effectiveness should be questioned and clarified, as with all protective masks in general. It should be noted that this marking and NOTS 95 on mask products declare that manufacturers in the EU guarantee that their product complies with the applicable requirements laid down in harmonization legislation, which proves this with the corresponding marking conformity assessment procedure. The purpose of this marking is to guarantee that the products marked with it can be traded without restriction in the EU or the area and to ensure safety for the consumer within this area and provide uniform protection with regard to health, safety and environmental concerns. It should be noted, however, that these and NOTS 95 marks must nevertheless be questioned because they are also used by fraudulent companies who circulate inferior or completely unsuitable goods of all kinds and thus also respiratory masks which are worthless and endanger health. Questioning the origin of the goods should therefore be the rule. As far as I know, Switzerland does not require a marking because this country does not provide for sector-specific conformity marking, but it can be applied as an alternative to the Swiss conformity mark. For the attachment of this and NOTS 95 marking at the sales product, the manufacturer or its authorized person and/or the producer is responsible.
Fabric masks of all fabric types, self-produced, given or purchased, are, as I have already made clear several times since the beginning of our corona discussions, in every respect against viruses, bacteria, parasites, microorganisms, fungal spores, liquid, non-volatile aerosols and thus also expiratory droplets, as well as against organic gases and vapors, not only absolutely useless, but even dangerous to health. Fabric masks, if they are made of tightly woven materials, as well as handkerchiefs or neckerchiefs etc., which are folded several times, can be held in front of the mouth and nose, only as short-term protection and emergency remedies, but not longer than 2 minutes at most, against bacteria, parasites, microorganisms, fungal spores, liquid and non-volatile aerosols and expiratory droplets, as well as against organic gases and vapors, but never against viruses.
FFP1 hygiene masks of inferior quality only correspond to masks that are only used as emergency protection masks and therefore only as disposable masks, which in no way correspond to a medical product, but are only made of special types of paper and other cheap materials. Such masks, which are absolutely unsuitable against infections, are only designed for material foreign bodies and can only be used for a short time. They are therefore only designed to repel or prevent the inhalation of material and partly liquid foreign substances. These masks have an adjustable nasal bridge, whereby they adapt to the contours of the face to a certain extent, but they can only be used for a short time, after which they must be disposed of properly.
FFP1 masks of better quality are made of lightweight non-woven material with elastic band and moldable nose clip, whereby no paper materials etc. are used, but only non-woven material. However, These masks are also only useful against all non-toxic and inert dust particles of 0.4 micron and larger, but not against viruses.
FFP1 masks of special quality are made of high-quality non-woven material and can be used for a short period of time if they correspond to a good product, as well as disinfected from time to time with 70% alcohol spray. If they are made of suitable non-woven material, they can be washed at 60 degrees after 1 day's use at the latest and then disinfected again with 70% alcohol spray. Such FFP1 masks can be washed up to 100 times and more by hand, not by machine, with a suitable detergent and then reused.
FFP2 respirators 3M FFP2 of good quality are recommended for use in normal daily life, but not for use with large groups of people.
These respirators usually consist of a hydrophobic treated fabric in their outer layer, which serves as an expiratory droplet and aerosol protection.
The middle layer of these masks corresponds to a 3-layer high-performance filter system called FFP2, which is professionally tested, while the inner layer is made of an antibacterially treated fabric.
Good untested FFP2 protective masks are innovative filter media which provide a known protection and safety against material foreign matter as well as against aerosols and expiratory droplets, fungal spores, microorganisms, bacteria and parasites.
These masks are good work protection masks, treated with dolomite dust and can therefore be used and reused several times. These masks have an enlarged filter surface and ensure a longer service life, while also offering an extra wide, skin-friendly face seal, good wearing comfort and relatively high safety. They are equipped with an adjustable, extra wide strap that guarantees individual adjustment. In general, a cool flow exhalation valve prevents heat buildup in the mask, making it easier to breathe, while a padded nose bridge ensures optimal adaptation to the face shape.
FFP3 respirators 3M FFP3 are made of a light-away non-woven material, are equipped with adjustable retaining straps, a moldable nosepiece and a very good exhalation valve. These masks correspond to a high safety level against material foreign matters solid particles as well as against bacteria, microorganisms, fungal spores, parasites, liquid and non-volatile aerosols and thus also expiration droplets, but also against organic gases and vapors. According to earthly designations and values, our test results have shown that really good masks of this kind offer protection that can be measured up to 10 times the MAC value. These breathable protective masks are 3-layer mask products, which offer very good protection for the wearer himself, but also for the persons in the immediate vicinity. Consequently, these masks are the most recommendable in strict contact with many people and in larger gatherings of people, etc. The FFP3 quality respirators, which have been thoroughly tested by us, provide effective protection against infections and thus against illness. These masks are designed for multiple use, can be easily sprayed with a little 70% alcohol if necessary and thus disinfected from time to time while maintaining their effectiveness over 5 wash cycles. These masks, like all the other respirators mentioned above, are not intended for medical use, just as they, like all the other protective masks mentioned, do not provide any protection against viruses. These masks correspond to products that meet all necessary requirements as generally quality respirators and can be recommended according to our knowledge and test results. All 17 different respirator masks tested by us, which you have procured for us and which we have checked very carefully to the best of our ability through lengthy examinations and tests etc., have produced extremely different findings and results, which are to be evaluated as absolutely unsuitable and highly hazardous to health, such as fabric masks of all kinds, both homemade and purchased, which are also to be evaluated as absolutely harmful to health, up to partly halfway usable products, such as FFP1 masks of various types. Furthermore, masks of higher value have also been proven, namely protective masks of the quality FFP2 and FFP3. Unfortunately, it has proven to be a disadvantage that extreme caution must be exercised when purchasing such products, because the majority of such masks correspond to very inferior or even absolutely unsuitable productions.
The second wave of the corona epidemic, which is already looming, will break out openly in a few days and spread worldwide in such a fast and precarious way that it will far exceed the now expired first wave. The second wave of the corona epidemic, which is already looming, will break out openly in a few days and spread worldwide in such a fast and precarious way that it will far exceed the now expired first wave. The now spreading second wave will be much more than the harmless term
second wave,
because it will spread very quickly to a worldwide conflagration, which will now also affect all of Europe and claim many victims. The two states of Italy and Spain will be badly affected by it again, as will all the states worldwide, which up to now have gotten off relatively lightly or without serious consequences. And, as I have already told you, Switzerland will not be spared either, because in your homeland, too, there are unfortunately the two factors that promote disaster, namely the incompetence and stupidity of those leaders and politicians who would be responsible in their jurisdiction for the measures to be taken and enforced against the corona epidemic. However, they are absolutely incapable of doing this, presenting themselves only in a self-glorious, pompous, complacent and stupid way in public, usually without any sense or purpose. In addition, there is also the grouping of the, as you say in each case, crossbin straw dummies, whose, as you always say, brain-damaged mind and their underdeveloped intelligence and howling unreasonableness are a roar, that, dear friend, I had to say in this way, for your way of expressing yourself is always much more apartment than mine, so that I have yet to learn it in my old age. Well, this second surge of the epidemic will also affect all countries in Europe this time, including Switzerland. Overall, the infections on all continents and in all countries outside Europe will increase very highly, as will the deaths, although, as I said, the whole of Europe will not be spared. Also those states in Europe, as well as all over the world, which have been less affected by the epidemic so far, or which have survived the first wave and live under the false assumption that everything is over for them, will now be affected by the second wave, and this in a more extensive way than was the case with the first passage of the epidemic. The official number, which does not include the large number of undetected cases, of 40 million people infected with corona disease worldwide will be reached around October 20th. While by then the official number of deaths worldwide, again without the number of undetected cases, will be over 1.2 million. The first end of the corona epidemic will not be the last end, because the virus will be carried far into the future. This is because in all countries of the whole world on the one hand the necessary and correct measures are not recognized by those responsible for the state, and on the other hand they cannot be enforced in the peoples to bring about an effective end of the epidemic. A further problem arises in this respect as a result of the stupidity of the worldwide incorrigible and irresponsible part of the population, which as a result of its devotion is bound to harmful conspiracy theories, whereby, because all precautionary and protective measures are disregarded, the corona epidemic is spread further. But this will be to the detriment and harm of many of those who refuse the protective measures themselves and will even bring them death. Furthermore, it must be repeated that there can be no certainty of immunity for those affected by the disease who have recovered, because our findings prove that once infected and recovered, They remain susceptible to infection throughout their lives and can therefore be infected and infested again at any time. Such a second infection can be more life-threatening than an initial infection with a subsequent recovery, which can lead to more deaths in such new infections. As we can see, even among experts, such as virologists and physicians etc., there are unteachable elements who trivialize the whole thing, fail to grasp the facts, or are even followers of conspiracy theories. Furthermore, it results, as was already explained several times in previous discussions, that once a corona infection has been overcome after recovery, impulses are deposited in the entire organism by the virus. This fact of a disease impulse deposit in the organism is unknown to the earthly virologists and physicians, through which, due to various circumstances, other diseases and ailments unrelated to the corona epidemic arise, which can prove to be a long-term wasting away and also fatal. Earthly medicine will not be able to counteract this fact for very long centuries, because the mass production and mass births of the ever-increasing overpopulation will carry the whole thing far into the future by heredity, which already started months ago and cannot be stopped or stopped anymore. So the Earth-human degeneration will or can lead to a very bad end regarding the enormous massive overpopulation that slowly threatens all life on Earth. Furthermore, it must be said, as far as I am allowed to explain something in this regard according to our directives, that the entire terrestrial medical science should not simply concentrate on the development of a certain vaccine, but at the same time also concentrate on the different blood groups. This is because these are important, because they determine, and this is something that should be emphasized, the degree of infection factor from the outset. In this respect I have to explain, for which I will use the terrestrial medical terms, that the erythrocytes or red blood cells, which consist of different structures such as proteins and lipid compounds on their surface, must be influenced by appropriate vaccines. The term lipids corresponds to a term which is to be understood as accumulation, whereby the lipid compounds mentioned are usually the largest on the erythrocytes. In this respect I have to explain, for which I will use the terrestrial medical terms, that the erythrocytes the red blood cells, which on their surface consist of different structures like proteins and lipid compounds, have to be influenced by appropriate vaccines. The term lipids corresponds to a term which is to be understood as accumulation, whereby the lipid compounds mentioned on the erythrocytes usually consist mainly of water-insoluble natural substances. Due to their low polarity, lipids can be easily dissolved in hydrophobic or waterless solvents. Lipids are similar to blood groups, whereby each person possesses a certain type of such antigens, which, as foreign proteins, cause the formation of antibodies against themselves in the body and thus form a certain blood group. The most important blood group systems of terrestrial human beings are first and foremost the subscription system, then the rhesus system and the Kell system, for which I must explain some things to understand non-medically educated people. Blood groups in the narrower sense are all genetically determined erythrocyte characteristics or slice-shaped, approximately 8.4 micrometers tiny cell nucleus-less cells, which are slightly dented in the middle. Such erythrocytes or blood cells have a lifespan of about 4 months and can be calculated at about 2600 billion in an adult person. Normally, every structure or organism of a human being develops an antibody on the surface of a cell, which represents an own blood group property. This blood group determination has a comprehensive practical significance, which, for example, prevents negative transfusion reactions in the event of a necessary blood transfusion. This is also important for clarifying transfusion incidents, for prenatal care, as well as for organ transplantation, all of which are of great importance in forensic medicine on Earth. If a person receives blood of an incompatible blood group, This can lead to a dissolution of erythrocytes by destruction of the cell membrane with the transfer of hemoglobin into the plasma, which destroys the blood components, which can be fatal. Not all blood groups are compatible with each other, which is due to the blood group antibodies, because for each blood group antigen there is also a specific blood group antibody, and this antibody can recognize the antigen in question and clump with it. So it is clear that blood group antibodies in the blood of every human being drive against those antigens that do not belong to humans. This prevents the body's own immune system from acting against its own erythrocytes. However, if a blood transfusion is carried out with the wrong blood of a different blood group, the foreign erythrocytes are fought in the blood system. The determination of the blood group is therefore of immense practical importance in blood transfusions, especially in organ transplantation. And finally, it should be said that blood groups of ethnic populations are usually different and also unequally distributed. This is just as the various blood groups are, of course, fundamentally different depending on their ethnic origin in terms of their susceptibility to infection, and also in terms of susceptibility to the coronavirus, to which blood group 0, is the least susceptible because it has a certain better immune stability than the other blood groups. These are the facts to be explained.
Thank you. Your explanations say much more than all our earthlings, virologists etc. have told us so far.
Because they probably don't know any better.